Now, the weekend that's in it, of course, Bruno is the main film which is out, and it comes, of course, with an awful lot of controversy. You only have to look back to 2006 and see just how Borat ruffled an awful lot of feathers, not just in the censor's office, but with an awful lot of public groups and family groups. Everyone was up in arms. So we thought now we'd look at some of the other films which have, on release, caused an awful lot of controversy, and I'm delighted to be joined in studio by Ross McDonough from the fantastic website rossvross.com. Just let's set up your website just for the get-go, Ross. This is a great little pros-like fight club.
Basically, yeah, it's just me and another reporter friend. We just drill each other over which film is better. We take two related films, and we just argue all day. Readers come on, decide who's right, who's wrong.
Lovely stuff, folks. It's a cracking little website. So you've been trawling through the archives of certain movies to kind of showcase that they really were a thorn in the side to an awful lot when they were out. I'd say Mary Whitehouse had a field day with certain movies that we're going to look at. I suppose some of the video nasty generation, an awful lot of films were being pulled off video shelves because they literally were it was no holds barred, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for example. This was banned for decades, really. I think it only got its proper release, say, in Ireland, I don't know, I could be guessing, maybe 6-7 years ago?
Yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a classic example. I suppose you have to look at where the borderline is set on violent films, how much is too much. Mm-hmm. Now, I think violence in films, I know a lot of films get... they get done by censors because there's a fear of that the stuff in them is going to be reproduced by people. People are going to be influenced by what they see. In my experience, films are usually censored for one of three things, and that's either violence, sex, or religion. And the first two you can see there's an argument for. I mean, if people are going to, recreate violence or sexual crimes from films. The religious thing I don't really get. As you say, from the video nasty era, I suppose the classic example is The Exorcist, which is a superb film and still is today. And but I just don't understand to date why religious films get this, why they should get this shield of blasphemy, like
the Passion of the Christ there only a few years ago with Mel Gibson.
Another perfect example. I mean, if the film was about another smaller religion, do you know what I mean? Maybe a more obscure religion. It wouldn't have caused as much controversy, but there's something about Catholicism that allows, the people to get high and mighty about it just because it's a big organisation, basically.
That's very true. I know even Scorsese's film, The Last Temptation of Christ with Willem Dafoe, that had people picketing outside Paramount Studios. They were up in arms to the point where when death threats were aimed at Martin Scorsese, that's when Paramount went, oh good God, what have we done?
Exactly, which is to me the height of hypocrisy. I mean, it's people complaining about Catholicism being tainted, like they're complaining about attacks on the church. And if these people are so holy, why are they threatening people with death? Which I think is one of the commandments. I'm not too up on it, but I
tell you, it's a well played, Ross. That's a very good point. And we think of directors under fire, like you just mentioned Scorsese. Stanley Kubrick had to pull his own film for an awful lot of years. People thought that Clockwork Orange, his classic movie starring Malcolm McDowell, that was banned outright by the censors, but in fact he had to pull that himself.
That's right. Again, another example of the director receiving death threats. For its time, Clockwork Orange was pretty controversial. If you look at it today, it's really not that bad in the vein of some of the films you see today. Of course, some of the sexual crime scenes in it are pretty hard hitting, but like they complain about the likes of, I don't know, his spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, his murder of the cat lady with the giant porcelain penis, you know what I mean, which back then might have been pretty shocking. I'm sure there's some sort of underlying hidden message in there, something to do with sexuality, but it's nowadays, if you look at it, it's kind of just funny.
Yeah, it is quite tame. Again, you mentioned there at the top about just how certain films and how they can influence people in real life and how they can take it to one extreme. If you look at the Child's Play series, I think it was the third film in particular, this was banned outright because of Jamie Bulger.
That's right, yeah, that shocking case of that poor child who was taken from the shopping centre by those two boys. I think they mutilated him, left him on a train tracks. It was an absolutely shocking case. But then straight after it was these suggestions, still to date we don't know if it was true or not, that they based the crimes on watching Child's Play. Now Child's Play was almost slapstick horror, like, you know what I mean? It was, nobody ever took them as serious horrors, It's obviously a story about a doll that comes to life and terrorises people. Scary if you're young, But to make that leap that, you know, kids were basing their crimes on these videos was pretty shocking, and it's dragged on today. A lot of films, a lot of people, you know, they complain about these violent films because of the exact same argument.
Now, another film actually which you have on your list there, Ross, because myself and Ross were going through all these different movies, and one that kind of jumped out at me, and I went, oh God, I forgot all about this film. It was an indie film, and directed by Larry Clark, who's got an awful lot of controversy surrounding him because he's had one film in particular, Ken Park. It's banned outright, I know, in Australia and in the States. I think the only way you can buy it is through eBay, through a Russian distributor. But Kids was his first film. And this dealt with some very taboo subject matter as well, and it was kind of full on as well with its depiction of teenage life.
That's right. Kids was a pretty shocking film for the time. It features the titular group of kids, and they're going around and they pretty much do what they want. They're kicking the crap out of each other. There's one guy, actually the main guy, again, spoiler, he has AIDS, and he's going around, he classes himself as I think he's some sort of virgin deflowerer, and he just goes around basically sleeping with as many virgins as possible, and he's spreading this disease, and it's pretty shocking, actually.
It is, and just the way it's shot, it's very realistic. Rosario Dawson actually makes her feature film debut, if I'm right in thinking, in that movie. And again, just to kind of go back to religion again, and just to showcase how things can be really taken to the extreme, and how then it can get into film, and how it can affect a film's distribution. Monty Python's The Life of Brian,
of course,
which is such a classic film. You look back at it now and you think, God, were people that hung up back then? But of course they were. This was, again, Ross, was just, the censors were having, they didn't want to know about this movie.
I mean, with the obvious, like as we mentioned earlier with The Exorcist and The Passion of Christ, not only the religious themes, it has has some shocking scenes in it, violence and whatever. As the joke goes, Mel Gibson just wanted to make a film about beating up a Jew, but came across this template. But I mean, the religion thing, as you say, Life of Brian, there's nothing in that but just religious jokes, you know what I mean? And it caused a massive controversy. But that exists today. Like, you see films like Dogma and even The Da Vinci Code, which are harmless films, but just because they make fun of the church, you know what I mean? They cause these massive controversies. And a lot of the time, it's gotten to the stage where the directors, they will it. I mean, it looks like The Da Vinci Code made such massive hype for itself over the film. When the sequel came about, which was extremely tame, they welcomed that controversy because it just increases awareness for the film. And
I remember even actually outside when the film was being released, I think it was like one of its the weekend in America, people outside again picketing, and a reporter went up to one person and said, "Have you read the book?" And they went, "No." "Have you seen the film?" And they were like, "No." And they were like, then what are you outside picketing for if you haven't seen or read anything about it?
That's it.
And it's just kind of pointing the finger again. It's ridiculous. Ross, thanks again for your time. We really appreciate that, going through some of the most controversial films ever made. Just before we go, tell us about your website.
Oh yes, myself and a fellow reporter colleague of mine, Ross McGuinness, we've set up a little movie website called rossvross.com, and basically the two of us just we take two films which are similarly related, and we basically argue over which is better. Like, we've done Batman Begins vs Batman Forever, Empire Strikes Back vs Return of the Jedi, Goodfellas v The Departed, Dangerous Liaisons versus Cruel Intentions. You know, if they're anyway connected, and I take one, he takes the other, and we basically have at it, and our readers get on and decide who's right and who's wrong, basically. Very good.
And I tell you something, folks, it's a cracking website, so definitely do check it out. That's rossvross.com. Ross, thank you once again, man, and we'll definitely talk to you again very, very soon.
Cheers, Gordon.